Welcome to Let Freedom Ring. As always, we have security here. Again, we're keeping Soapy pre-op out. We don't know who attacked me on the 2-year anniversary show. I think it was Soapy. We're still not sure. I've been a little paranoid, and I apologize to the audience for last week being a little shook up towards the end of the show. But anyways, this week, my guest is Michael Gledhill. Michael, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, pleasure to have you. Well, let's get to know you a little bit. Where do you live now, and where'd you grow up?
Well, now I live in Manchester, New Hampshire, which is, quite a sweet little town. But if you're from Brewer, New Hampshire, it's a giant, scary metropolis. That's something I've learned. And I grew up in a town called Chatham in England, which is kind of similar to Manchester. It's like an old industrial town. The Navy was Chatham's thing. But that all disappeared in the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
And so it's, trying to find a new identity for itself, and working through some of the same struggles that Manchester is, but so I could felt like I blended into my new world relatively easily.
Awesome. Now it was because like Manchester, New Hampshire, is actually named after, I believe, Manchester, England.
Yeah,
as a mill town.
And quite purposely. The chap, I think his name was Lowell. He kind of snuck over there and kind of took mental photographs of all the machinery, came back and built them patent-free in New England, where you have these fast-flowing rivers. Actually, it's kind of nice in a way. In Manchester, England, it was kind of, I believe, mostly that they were powered by coal, so you get the kind of smoggy atmosphere and things. But of course, New England had these tremendously powerful rivers that could power, all the industry without lighting a fire. So I think they kind of got a slightly better deal in the new Manchester. But yeah. Yeah,
no. I mean, obviously, as you know, I've worked in the mill, in the mill yard, which used to be, these very powerful mills I believe the 1800s. What's 3 things that everybody should know about you?
3 things. Well, number 1 is that I'm a stay-at-home dad to 2 little boys, and that's been my life for the last 6.5 years. I guess the second thing would be that I have a PhD in medieval history.
Nice.
So I'm a doctor, but not the sort that helps people. And the third thing, which I'm not afraid to admit to now in this day and age, I don't think I need to be ashamed, is that I love playing the recorder.
Okay.
The world's most maligned instrument. But no, I'm going to stand up and say it's a great instrument. People need to learn more about it.
Awesome. I think I played a little bit of that probably in school at some point.
Yeah, I think that's most people's, like 3 Blind Mice is what you think of when you think of the recorder, squeaky. But there's a lot of serious music written for the recorder back before the flute was invented, when the flute just replaced the recorder because it is a better instrument. But it's also harder to play, so I play the recorder.
Nice. Now, quick question. How do you decide on medieval history? Is that just a passion or something that you just really were into? Or?
Yeah, well, I always loved history, and it was the medieval side of things. I mean, growing up in England, the medieval world is kind of all around. The town I grew up in has, the town next door has this huge castle, Rochester Castle, and a huge medieval cathedral. And you kind of walk around these places, and the stone... I remember as a kid, you kind of walk up the spiral staircases in the castle. The stone steps are worn down in the middle, and I always thought about the kind of the people over the last 1,000 years that have gone up and down these solid stone steps and gradually worn them down. And of course, it would have been heavily armed knights. It would have been the servants. It would have been all these kind of people. It made me really want to know more about the medieval world because I felt kind of connected to it. And I went to university and did history generally, but tended to gravitate towards the older stuff.
Yeah, no. Very fast. I mean, I'm more of a U.S. history kind of guy, but I love history. I really do. And there's just so much. All right. Well, now obviously you immigrated to the United States. So this is a question that we get a lot of different answers on, and it's not the most simple question. But what does it mean to you to be an American?
Yeah, there are a lot of layers to that question. And I think it's an interesting question insofar as it's not something I thought about as an Englishman, you don't think, what does it mean to be an Englishman? You're born in England. Bob's your uncle, you're an Englishman. Beyond, cricket and warm beer. But Americans are much more kind of self-conscious about their country being based on an idea, And of course, now I've become an American since last April.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. And of course, I've sworn to defend the Constitution. And the Constitution is something certainly that's worth defending. But it got me thinking about kind of why I chose to become an American. And really that was kind of very personal reasons. My family, I'd had 2 kids here. We had made our home here. My wife, of course, is an American, grew up in Manchester. And I didn't want there to be anything that separated me from my family and from my home. I wanted to be a complete part of that. And so that's kind of the reason why I started the process of becoming an American. And in terms of being an American, well, one thing I've noticed in my neighbours and in the local community is this is a lot of kind of, there's a good sense of community in terms of helping each other. When I first got here, we saw the big snowstorms. We don't get big snowstorms back home. But like everyone's out digging out each other's drives, helping each other out. And it's, it's very kind of low-key local stuff, but it's kind of that community that I think is kind of one of the biggest parts of being an American.
Awesome. Because we've had other guests on the show that had to take the citizenship test. Mm. How did that go? Because I have taken it. I passed. I just want people to know that. What did you think of that test? I mean, did you really have to study hard, or you're already a historian? So
well, I did study hard because I had already been teaching American history in a local college.
Okay.
And I thought, if I get any of these questions wrong, I'm not going to be able to look the students in the face.
Don't let them know.
I was revising, Rutherford B. Hayes and all the rest of it, and I nailed it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was too difficult. I forgot most of the questions as soon as I was trying to make a mental note of them. One of them was, who was the president in the First World War?
Oh boy, FDR. Oh no! What I was saying. Now I'm getting nailed. Woodrow Wilson. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Edit that, Colin, please. Yeah. Go ahead.
And things like that. And some of them, the history ones, obviously, I didn't have too much of a problem with that. And the practical ones, I think, are a good idea. Kind of the questions about how the government works on things. I think it's good for people becoming citizens to know that stuff. So I think it's a good idea to have that. There's nothing that was like a trick question.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It didn't feel like they were trying to trip anyone up. It was fairly kind of accessible, basic information. But,
yeah, I think it's a good thing to take. I mean, I've taken only practice ones. Obviously, I'd never had to do that. And we're going to edit that out. I'm thinking World War II, and he asked, like, when you are put on the spot, though, sometimes it is hard to, answer those questions. But I want to get into this because I really want to talk about this. Obviously, coming to the U.S., how did you decide that you wanted to move to the United States? I mean, I know the answer, but...
Yeah. Well, I met... the lady who's now my wife, Anne. We met in London.
Big fan of Anne.
Doing medieval history together.
Yeah.
And at the end of the master's, it was a master's degree, she came back to America. I stayed on to do a PhD. And we realised that, we just had to be together. And really, it's kind of one of it that we were toying with settling down in England. We were toying with settling down in America. At the end of the day, I finished my PhD and already had a job. And it just made sense to kind of come here on the basis of that, more or less. So, that's why we made the decision.
Now, did you ever think that you would end up dating an American? I mean, growing up, how does that happen?
No, I didn't ever really consider it. And people joked when I did, move to America and things that was the most English person they knew. What was I doing moving to America? But and it was partly, she was so outgoing and, American when I met her that it was kind of a breath of fresh air. And, yeah.
Awesome. What has been the most, let me see here. Was it difficult kind of making that transition? Obviously, I mean, I've been to other countries, never long term. Things are different. Like, what's the most difficult part?
Well, I mean, I was lucky in a sense because some people have to move country. I didn't have to move country. I chose to move country, which makes a big difference. I also moved to a country that speaks the same language, more or less.
It's very helpful.
And is broadly, has a very similar system of government law. We're cousins country-wise.
Yeah.
So it was really the kind of all the little things that kind of added up. And it was odd moving to a new country. The first thing that struck me is just how much bigger everything is, how much space there is. Everyone, not everyone, of course, but so many more people live in detached houses, for example. They're very rare in the UK. The roads are enormous and straight. Every road is straight. They don't kind of weave in and out and things. These are the sort of things you notice as soon as you kind of touch down.
Yeah.
And, you see a school bus and think, "Whoa, I'm on TV." So I kind of, I did have a bit of a meltdown at one point because, as we were talking earlier, I loved being around all the medieval buildings and things in the UK. And, you can go and get a drink in a pub that's been a pub for 1600 years, or well, maybe not that long, about 1200 years maybe. Yeah. Some of the older pubs. And then there's a lot of history in New Hampshire, as people have been here for 20,000 years. But you can't see a lot of that history. It's great that they preserved the mills and things like that. I think they've done a fantastic job keeping the character of Manchester alive for future generations. But that goes back to the 1800s. You get a little bit of stuff in the 1700s, but that's about it. And then Anne told me that the forest, the Great Northern Forest in New Hampshire, all that had been cut down, so that wasn't even old. It's all regrowth. So I was like, there's nothing old here for me to just kind of, but that passed, as you get used to it, and I got to learn more and more about the history of what had gone on, and start to learn how to see the history, because I'd learned how to kind of see history in the landscape and things in England, whereas it looks very different. And it creates kind of unexpected differences. Like America, at least around here, there's not really villages.
Yeah.
In the same way. My parents now live in a little village in the UK. And they're kind of little clusters of houses. That's how the countryside is. Cluster of houses surrounded by fields, because that's how they grew up in the Middle Ages. Mm-hmm. Because the fields would be worked kind of communally around, and the church would be in the middle, and you'd have your houses and things. And actually, they tried to do that with the colonists, the first, particularly up here in New England, with the more religiously minded. I think the churchmen were like, well, we're going to have our church, and everyone's going to be next to us, and we're going to be leaders of the community. And then people were like, well, I want 38 acres of land because it's there, and Americans like gas, they expand to fill the available room. And so you get these, you do get rural communities, but they look very different. They're kind of a house, 500 meters, another house, and things like that. So just lots of kind of, they're different countries. But
how is now in England, driving on the other side of the car, right?
That took a little getting used to.
Is that difficult? I know a lot of mailmen do that because they can go on both sides. But was getting your driver's license difficult?
Well, the test wasn't very difficult, I found. And thinks it's just because they knew I already had a license. But it's sort of right, here's your license. Compared to most people kind of fail the UK driving test. I mean, our roads are much narrower. That's the thing. You drive on the other side of the road, but realistically, I found Americans tend to drive in the middle of the road. Yeah. So it's kind of much for muchness. And there's a lot more leeway for mistakes. But yeah, so that was definitely something that was... Well, when you first get here, I was always looking the wrong way when crossing the road. It was more as a pedestrian that was a danger, because I was always like, about to get hit in the back of the head by a truck or something, because I was expected it to be on the other side of the road.
Oh, yeah. What is the major? Well, I kind of talked about this. Any major differences between living in the United States and England?
Well, it's there's different kind of foods that you can and can't get hold of. That's, I think, what a lot of immigrants to other countries kind of the first thing they noticed. So I was, when I first came here just to visit, Anne was like, let's go for a picnic. And I was like, great, let's get the sausage rolls, pork pies, and Scotch eggs.
Sounds good.
And she was like, doesn't exist. And I was like, well, what do you have at picnics? Things like that. I went into a supermarket and haddock's huge here. So I was like, great, they're going to have smoked haddock. And they looked at me like I was from Mars. Smoked what? Yeah. So yeah, I don't get you missed those sort of things. But and of course the sports are quite different.
Very different, yeah.
Although there's more interpolation these days. I mean, American football's getting bigger and bigger back home. You know, they have the game at Wembley.
Yeah.
And they have it on TV. My brother's a big fan, and has been for many years, actually. In the mid-90s, we got a free copy of Madden 94 on floppy disk, you know, and he was hooked from then on.
Is he? I'm assuming he's a Cowboys fan, then.
Well, he's actually a Philadelphia Eagles fan.
Oh, wow. So. For the mid-90s, that's...
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea why he picked Philadelphia, but maybe he likes the Rocky films or something. But I'll have to ask him that. But yeah, of course, over here there's a little bit of cricket and there's a little bit of rugby.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
No, but yeah, I've had to learn the rules to a lot of new sports.
So there is a big cricket community in Nashua.
I've heard rumours of it.
I've seen them I play a lot of softball. We'll show up to the field and the cricket guys will be on the field and we're like, hey, well, we have a permit. Like, can we work this out? But I see them everywhere, and I've seen them taking batting practice in Lowell. Yeah, there's a actual big community of cricket players. I got the schedule for the fields for the summer because I'm running a league, and they're on there. They got a bunch of chunks of time for.
That's great. Yeah, I know it's been big in Massachusetts for quite a while. And they have some respectful teams, and they invite teams sometimes from the West Indies to come up and play down there. And there's actually quite a long history of cricket in the US. It was played kind of way back. George Washington played a version of it at Valley Forge called Cricket Wicket, which was, I think the rules are more or less the same. And Philadelphia actually had a very high quality cricket league in the 1800s. But after the Civil War, I think it really got kind of supplanted by...
Well, I could be wrong. I feel like baseball spawned off of cricket a little bit.
I think there's certainly a relation. Also with another older game called Rounders, which is very similar to baseball. The only difference that I remember, we played Rounders at school casually, but the whole kind of team bats every innings. So that's more like cricket. So somewhere in between the two. Yeah, I think there's certainly a kind of common ancestry.
Very similar. And we kind of asked, what was the most difficult part of moving here? Anything that we kind of talked about that. What's your favorite part about living in the United States? Besides your wife.
Well, yeah, I was going to say. Well, if you had asked me several years ago, I would have said minor league hockey. Because I got taken to a Manchester Monarchs game the first time I visited. I was like, what is this? This is incredible. It's like the speed of the game, the violence of the game, just the sheer excitement of it all. I kind of fell in love with it. And it was a real shame that the team ended up moving out, which is kind of one of the things I struggle a bit with American sports is as much as I enjoy the sports themselves, the way they run, it's very openly as an entertainment product. Yeah. And they look for markets rather than... It's very different from the feel of football, soccer back home, where, every town has its team and they go up and down the leagues, and it's kind of... It feels a bit more kind of organic rather than this being an entertainment that's run with profitability in mind, which, makes sense on a certain level, but it does lead to desperately sad situations like Manchester now being an old mill town without a hockey team. What's our identity now? But it's a great few years supporting them, and then they won the cup. Yeah. The night that my first son was born.
Oh wow!
And didn't appreciate being woken up to be told that.
Yeah.
but that was quite a run because we were very, very lucky actually because they gave everyone. They knew it was going to be their last season.
Yeah,
they were moving out, so they said everyone can come to all the playoff games for free.
Oh, wow.
A decision that no doubt they regretted when they went all the way.
Yeah.
And every round went to the full quota of games, It was one of the greatest sporting things I've ever attended. And Anne was a trooper. She was very, very heavily pregnant and sitting in like the third overtime period. You're like, are they going to score soon? And then they scored. So.
It was great having the Monarchs there. I enjoyed them too. I understood. I guess when the main team is in LA, it was kind of like, how come they are here in New Hampshire? You know, like.
Yeah, I know. Whenever they kind of called someone up, they would have to do it quite. It's very difficult to call people up for emergencies, which I guess was probably the main reason that they moved the team. You know, for that kind of, because it was very exciting to see kind of the NHL players go up and down.
Yeah.
And you know, we saw some real big names down there in our little town. You know, coming and going.
I'm hoping we get something else. I mean, there's been a lot of things in the SNHU arena. There was at one point there was arena football in there, but now we don't really have.
Yeah, it needs a new. Needs a team. It's a pity that you know. I mean, Providence are never going to let go of the baby Bruins.
No.
So yeah, I don't know how they're going to fill it, but hopefully they will.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I know how Quebec feels now. You know.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
On a much smaller scale.
Do you guys go to the Fisher Cats at all?
We do sometimes. Yeah, we've been to a few games. It's the kids don't quite have the attention span for it yet.
It's a tough.
Yeah.
Tough day.
I enjoy the feel of it, though. I mean, I love going to see county cricket, which kind of it would be kind of the similar kind of level of cricket, where it's kind of much more relaxed. It's cheap to go and see, and it's a similar kind of atmosphere, very relaxing. You can sit back and watch people swing a few balls around and eat some hot dogs. And yeah, no, we like it. We like it down there. They do a good job, and it's ridiculously cheap. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I love the Fisher Cats. Can't say enough. And they were happening no matter what was going on with the lockout. We got quite a few fan questions for you. First one from Melissa Marie, one of my coworkers. What's it like being married to the coolest woman in the world, Anne O'Reilly? We all love Anne. We really do.
It's really fantastic. You know, I mean, Anne, she works so hard and she supports this family so I can be the stay-at-home dad, which is, you know, what I wasn't doing. She does tremendously well at work, and as soon as she clocks out, you know, she's so helpful, wonderful with the kids, and you know, it's fantastic to. Well, you know how wonderful Anne is.
Anne's just one of those people that just lights up a room. Like she always makes you feel welcome. Just a genuine human being.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly, and that's the kind of is that spark that, you know, hit me way back when. And
got you come all the way here. From Kelly LaPlante, another coworker. What piece of advice for a fellow doctoral student who fears they won't make it through? Kelly's going for her doctorate right now.
Yeah. Well, that's a question I can sympathise with. I was kind of this close to jacking in halfway through, and it can be tough. My advice would be try not to think about the whole thing at once, because that's when it gets overwhelming. You know, doctorates are slightly different in the UK and the US. There's more classes than the American ones. Back home, it was kind of very free form. I just had to produce a 120,000 word essay, basically.
Oh, wow.
And when you think about that in one go, when you're kind of like a third of the way through, you think this is impossible. How can I possibly get? But just focusing on what has to be done in the next couple of weeks, over the next month or so. That's a big help. Also, kind of finding support. You know, I had supervisors who were kind of a first port of call. I was living with another doctoral student, which you know, we could talk things through, as we did the night I almost quit, and I made use of kind of the resources at the university for, you know, people who are professional listeners, to take that kind of worry to. Because it can feel, you know, when you're thinking of quitting your PhD, you think, well, this isn't a real problem. You know, I don't want to go and talk to a counsellor about it. But the reality is, they're there to help you. They're part of the university, and they can help you. And you know, it's worth checking out what resources are available. So yeah, those would be the kind of main ways I got through.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, we know you're going to make it through. She's a great team lead that we have, and I got a good feeling she's going to get through it. So. From Jesse DeLay, a good friend of mine. Now, Jesse's in-laws are from England. So he has some questions here. What's more fun to play, cricket or rugby?
Well, I have fonder memories of playing rugby, oddly enough, mainly because I made the team more often. at school. I really wanted to be good at cricket. I wanted it so bad, but I was terrible. So, I mean, I didn't want it enough to improve enough, evidently. But I was in the team for 1 year, and then I didn't make the kind of first 11 too often, and now after that I just kind of played casually with friends, which was still very enjoyable. But they're very different sports to play. The physicality is part of it, but also in terms of in rugby it's very much a team sport. The whole thing has to work together to achieve anything. In cricket it is a team sport, but when you actually, the competitive moments are between individuals. It's the batsman against the bowler. It's so it's quite different. You can just go out there and you have to rely on yourself to do what needs to be done. In rugby, it's just a different way of thinking. It can be very satisfying in a sport like rugby when things work. They didn't work for our team too often, but it can be in a kind of very different way. But on the other hand, there's nothing quite like feeling when you've. You're a softball player, right?
Yeah.
When you hit that sweet spot on the bat, it's a wonderful
better.
feeling. Yeah. Again, something I wish I'd felt more of. but yeah, so they both have their attractions. Also, in cricket, you can kind of hang around in a jumper in the sun for 6 hours, and it's quite pleasant.
What position do you play in rugby?
Funnily enough, I was the hooker. You wouldn't think to look at me.
Yeah.
But I was pretty young when I played up at about the age of 15 for the school. And I wasn't terrific, but I did get the ball in the scrum.
All right.
Partly because, look at me, it didn't make much difference if I was pushing or not. I had two enormous props next to me. So I could just concentrate on hooking the ball. And my Oscillate numbers always seem more concerned with hurting me than getting the ball. Yeah. They're like, I'm going to attack your shins. I thought, well, I'm wearing shin pads, It's not, do what you will. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. Wasn't so good at the line outs and things.
Those are not easy.
Tended to be going to the first people in the row because that's all I could reach. But and now at this distance, I've kind of forgotten the pain of being tackled when the ground's frozen. And
Yeah, I played on the wing, and I was horrible at remembering the plays. They only liked me because I was a wrestler growing up, and I could tackle anybody. Didn't matter how big they were. So they said, put him on the wing, and if someone gets by, he'll take him down. But so it's a great game. All I can say. Jesse also want to know, isn't Christmas pudding the worst? Not even the hard sauce and open flames. Can you make it tolerable, in my opinion? You can't make it tolerable, in my opinion.
Well, you see, I make it every year.
Okay.
And it's a fabulous process. It takes, you do it a month or so before Christmas, and you pour in all the brandy and then a bit more brandy, and then all the fruit and some brandy, and the sugar in the brandy. Yeah. And it steams away for hours, and then you put it in the cupboard, and then you get it out and you steam it again, and then put some more brandy on it. And then you set it on fire. And I don't know if Anne's family's just being polite, but they say they like it. Yeah. So I'm going to keep making it.
No, that's awesome.
It's very rich. It's definitely an acquired taste, though.
Okay.
If you don't like incredibly rich things covered in brandy, then it's not.
Might not be for you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to try that. I'll have to come by and try it. So we have a longer question from Tara Lucier and another SNHU person. It's a long comment. Do you ever get comments when you take the boys places like, say, the library, music classes, daytime activities, about being a stay-at-home dad among mostly stay-at-home moms? I've seen some posts about differing reactions to men and women doing the same thing and wondering if it's prevalent, how prevalent it really is.
It does. I think there is a difference, a few different. I think it is true that I got a lot of more random praise on the street than a mother would. People come and go, "What a great dad!" Yeah. When I'm just kind of hanging around with them in the park, as if it's pushing around in the stroller. Isn't that wonderful? It's like, and very little negative, in a way, negative comments. I think one person in 6 years has ever said the kind of babysitter thing to me, which and it's not exactly offensive anyway. So I don't get too bothered by that sort of thing. But but yeah, I think people do kind of give you. I mean, I was happy to take the random praise from strangers because it lightens your day and things. But yeah, I don't think I'd get that if I was a stay-at-home mother. And it is kind of different being a stay-at-home dad, particularly when Ben was my eldest was kind of a tiny baby.
Yeah.
And I was first going to the parks, and you get these kind of gaggles of mums, and I'm the dad kind of coming up, but all they want to talk about is the atomic bomb that's just gone off in their body, and they don't want to be part of that conversation. I don't want to be part of that conversation, so I'll just kind of take Ben off in the little stroller. And,
Yeah, no, I mean, times have changed. I mean, I know a lot of stay-at-home dads now. Like, I think, to Tara's question, I think it is changing, though. I don't think people are... Sure, there might be some people that think that way, but I would say most don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think, like I say, I've never really had anyone, be unpleasant about it or be, I think people... if anything, they just sort of see it as nice as there's a stay-at-home parent, whoever it is. I think a lot of the ideas, the old ideas that used to keep women in the home about women are natural caregivers and men are not. I think that's not been shown not to be true. Men can care for children just as much as women can. I mean, I can see in a sense when people used to talk like that, it wasn't only a way of oppressing women. It's also to kind of give some dignity to the idea of motherhood and being a stay-at-home parent. You say, well, only you can do this.
Yeah.
There's kind of it's double-edged sword. It's kind of on one hand, only you can do this, but on the other hand, you can do only this.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that it's kind of now, whomever wants to be a stay-at-home parent, I say there's probably a lot of people that would like to be a stay-at-home parent and can't for various reasons, but in terms of gender, whomever wants to be can be.
I totally agree with that. We have one more from Monique Martineau Kearns. Monique, I hope I said the last name because she hasn't added a last name now. She's married. Which prince is your favorite, William or Harry? Is her first question.
Well, I'm glad you didn't put Andrew on the list. Well, yeah, they're fine. Both of them are fine. I felt a bit bad for Harry when his wife seemed strangely unpopular. I didn't understand people's reaction to Meghan Markle.
She's an American, right?
Yeah.
She's
American, but people would be like, "Oh, she's she's a commoner or whatever." But of course, Kate Middleton was a commoner.
Yeah.
So it swings and roundabouts. But yeah, I think that people have been harsh on Harry for getting out of the firm.
Yeah.
But I say go for it.
Now she also wants to know what's your favorite restaurant in Manchester, and I think I know what Monique's is, but what's yours?
Well, back in the day, it would have been Norlands.
Okay.
There used to be a New Orleans restaurant downtown that was wonderful, but sadly that's gone. These days, we love Bubba's. It's a Vietnamese place.
Oh, okay.
Just opposite the Red Arrow. It's just the best ramen. So it's fantastic. And we always love Blake's, of course. That was always our kind of fallback place. But yeah, probably Bubba's at the moment.
I do love Vietnamese food. And I think Monique's favorite is Chez Vachon. So, Monique, if you're watching, that's what I think your favorite is.
We have been there. I haven't had poutine there.
Oh, you got to.
Cheesy chips and gravy, as they call it up north England. But yeah, I need to join a poutine fest. And
you should get. So my brother started the whole poutine fest, and we've had him on the show. We've had Renee McCaster on the show, who runs Hot Mess Poutine. Left Freedom Ring's a big poutine fan, so definitely try it. She also wants to say, P.S. Your wife is my favorite person at SNHU. Sorry, Dan. Well, I can't compete. How do you compete with Ann? You can't, All right, I do have some sports stuff. Now, I want to talk about this. I'm wearing the jacket. New England Free Jacks opening first home game this weekend. They've been in the league now for a couple of years. But this weekend, opening match, they're playing Toronto. Do you think rugby can work here in the United States and grow popularity?
You know, I don't see any reason why not, and I think it has a promising future in that it seems to have grown quite organically, and it's just kind of generally quite popular. I know the Rugby Sevens has been popular here for a while.
The Las Vegas tournament,
And now Union seems to be taking off. You know, I've seen some of the local. We went up to see the Amaskeg rugby team a couple of times.
Oh yeah, okay.
They're playing to a good standard, you know, and people are really into it. I think with sports like, I mean, cricket is trying to get off the ground here. But at the moment, it's kind of restricted to the immigrant communities, which is fine and it's great. But I feel like rugby's kind of broken out of. That's not the way rugby started to get popular. So it's got more of a kind of broader base already. Cricket needs to kind of get over that wall and spread out amongst the population. But yeah, I think rugby's got a promising future. It's interesting to see. I'd love to see. I haven't seen the New England team play, but I'd be interested to watch it. I tend to watch. I haven't watched much club rugby, but I watch the Six Nations every year and the World Cup when it's on. And the sport's changed so much since I was a kid. I don't know if you used to watch it back in the 90s if you were playing.
No. I honestly wasn't familiar with it till I got to college.
Oh right, okay. Because I only turned professional in '94, I think '94 or '95. And since it turned professional, the players have all grown in size. I mean, the wing, your position, used to be these tiny little fellas ducking and weaving. And
I was about 50 pounds lighter back then.
but now everyone is huge. Like everyone on the team could be a forward, you know, if you ask them to. So they're hitting much harder, and one problem rugby has to get over at the moment, rugby union has to get over, is the scrum. I don't know if this debate's reached America yet, but at the international level, the scrums become a bit of a liability, because it used to be, when I remember them being one of the most exciting parts of the game, because it would be a genuine contest for the ball, a contest of strength and kind of skill in pushing, and you would have turnovers. Your team wasn't certain to get the ball. I remember a fantastic scrum sticks in my mind from a Wales-France game. France are right down on the Welsh inside the Welsh 22, and get the put in at the scrum. The Welsh pack just push them straight off the ball and get out the back and start the attack that ultimately won them the game. But that just doesn't. Now what happens is the forwards started pushing earlier and earlier, so they tried to kind of stop them from pushing, but now it just collapses. They reset, It collapses, reset,
which is
collapses,
one of the
reset.
hardest things to watch when you're watching a rugby match.
And then after like that happens 5 times, and then it seems completely randomly one of the teams gets a penalty, whichever, you know, it seems very little rhyme or reason to it on the outside. And I don't know how they're going to fix it. You know, people can say that the refereeing is a problem, but I mean, this started with the coaches and the players, but I don't know if it's a philosophical point. It's something about becoming professional, where winning becomes, you know, the more important in a sense. You can't kind of dial that back. You can't ask teams to do it. Well, go back to how you used to do it, because then the other team's going to not do that and they'll win the scrum. Yeah. So I have no idea how they're going to fix it, but I hope they do.
I haven't noticed that too much in MLR so far. I mean, I've mainly just watched the Free Jacks games, but I will say, if you do want to watch, the Rugby Network app is free. So you can get, I was surprised. I was like, I can get every single game on my phone for nothing? Okay. But super excited about this weekend. So how big is cricket? Now, I've heard, since I've known Anne, she's always said you like cricket, and you watch a lot. Like, how big is the sport across the world?
Well, it's spread across the globe. It's played more or less anywhere that the British Empire went. It's very much, you know, I remember there's a history of cricket, and the title was Imperial Leather.
Yeah.
It's, and it's huge. I mean, the biggest market is India and Pakistan, and to an extent Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. And, you know, that's like 1.5 billion people.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, out there, they're the kind of sporting superstars. You know, they're the Tom Brady's, is the Sachin Tendulkar's, and the Virat Kohli's. So that's, you know, numbers-wise, it's pretty big,
Yeah.
just because of the subcontinent. It's not. I mean, in England, it lags a long way behind football, and perhaps a little behind rugby. It's hard to say, but it's definitely not the kind of major sport in many of the other countries. Australia is big in Australia; they always get good crowds in, and New Zealand are kind of, well, so far as anything's big in a country of 3 million people.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're one of the top teams at the moment. But it's its future is assured in the subcontinent. So
Yeah, I like to see that. I almost ordered my sister-in-law's from India, or her family's from India. She's always lived here. I almost bought the Indian cricket jersey. I was like, oh, that's kind of sharp. But do you think that, and like I said, we talked about it, cricket's pretty big in Nashua, in the Lowell area. There's a big group doing that. But is soccer the most popular sport in the world, would you say?
I think certainly in terms of the number of countries that play it, I think that's true. And I think it will always have an advantage because of all the major sports, it's the simplest. You need very little equipment for it. It's not like ice hockey where you need, if you want to play ice hockey, you need ice time, you need skates, you need armour, you need a very good dental plan.
Yeah.
Football, you need some flat ground and 2 things as goalposts, and you can start playing. The rules are very simple, and I think that will always kind of give it an advantage over, because anyone can play it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, it was the first sport that I ever played. And then my dad said when I was 7, he goes, no, you're playing baseball. I'm glad he did, because I love baseball and I hate soccer. But even like my niece, my nephew, they've all played, and it's really big in Merrimack.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. To be good at it, it's got to be the hardest
Oh,
part,
yeah. And again, you start to... I've never been a huge football fan myself. I was always more into cricket and rugby to an extent. But I know from people, I've lived with people that are fanatical about it. And they, well, like with any sport, when you get down to the tactical niceties of it, and it can be a very complex game, despite its simplicity, which is, the hallmarks of a good game, really. If you don't get too bogged down in laws, but you do get bogged down in the implications of that laws. And,
Yeah, no. I will watch the World Cup, but I can't say that. To me, rugby's a much better game.
Yeah.
I love rugby.
I have to say, I did struggle going back to soccer after having seen ice hockey. So I was like, why are they moving so slowly? Yeah. And why is that man fallen over when he's been brushed? You should get up and punch the other guy.
I do want to do some top 5s with you here. Do you have a top 5 favorite movies?
I'm not a huge movie fan, but there's a few. I do enjoy kind of the classic. My favourite one would be Dr. Zhivago, I think.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen it. Kind of snowy Russia, revolution. An interesting take on the revolution back in the 60s. There's also a Russian film from the 60s of War and Peace that I love.
Okay.
It's ridiculously long, and it looks like it's filmed in the 30s because that's the equipment they had in the Soviet Union in the 60s. But they really kind of capture the novel very well, particularly the main character. And I might have to fill up the other 3 spots with Lord of the Rings because Anne and I have watched them over and over and over and know practically every line. We can't with the marathons. I start to get a little bit sleepy during the ends. Yeah. But I still love them. Yeah.
Just a quick question as a historian: do you like Ken Burns at all?
No, I've seen. We watched a very good documentary of his on the Dust Bowl.
Okay.
So I enjoyed that a lot. My in-laws have had the baseball one on TV.
Yeah, so. That's like the go-to. But he's very talented filmmaker there. Do you have top 5 favorite TV shows?
I do. They're mostly going to be British comedies.
Okay.
That you put. There's one called Peep Show.
Okay.
And there's one called Alan Partridge, and does like them. But she finds British comedy tremendously depressing, so we can't binge watch them. We binge watch Friends together. You go. It's very light, and you can go to bed feeling happy.
Yeah.
You binge watch a British comedy, and it's just people's lives falling apart, and us laughing at them.
Yeah.
Not with them. But I do love those shows. documentary-wise, I think, have you ever seen World at War?
I have, no.
It's a Second World War documentary, but it was made in the 60s, I think.
Okay.
So a lot of the talking heads are people who are there, and they got a lot of kind of big. I mean, there's problems with it. They go a bit easier. They have Albert Speer, who was very high up in the Nazi Party, as one of the talking heads.
Okay.
And they go a bit easy on him.
Yeah.
Because, they kind of buys in. Well, but to have him on the program is fascinating to hear him talk about how the government of Nazi Germany worked and things, having seen it first hand from the inside. And they have James Stewart, the actor, who was actually a squadron commander. Squadron leader in the Air Force.
And Wonderful Life is one of my favorite. That is my favorite movie.
Well, in the middle of that, this is Anne's trivia about Wonderful Life. Is there's a huge break in filming because he joined the Air Force.
Yeah.
And then he comes back, and they had to put something in because he comes back with this like scar or something from the war, and they kind of had to put a scene in where he gets hit by something. I don't know. Anne knows the film better than I do, but that's why. Because
I do have two other just kind of British TV show questions here. Did you watch The British Office?
I did, yes. That was a huge deal when it came out back home.
And have you seen the American? Because we get into a lot of debates with people. Everybody's like, no, the British one was better. I go, but it didn't evolve to what the other one did.
Yeah, I think the American one did a lot better when it stopped using the British storylines, when it became its own thing.
Yeah.
Again, somewhat more light-hearted, a bit less depressing, and the British one was very good. I mean, it's something that's generally different between British and American TV shows. Is American TV shows will have, dozens and dozens and dozens of episodes, and they'll go on and on and on, for better or for worse. Very few shows manage to pull it off without taking. British shows will have 6 episodes in a series and have like 3 series. That's your lot. They're done forever. I don't know why. I don't know if it's if they have a broader team of writers traditionally in America. I mean, something like The Simpsons, which would be on my favourite TV shows list. I know they've had a large team of writers that can gradually change over time, and of course you can keep churning out episodes that way. Whereas with the British Office, it was very much Ricky Gervais,
who can be very dark. You're right.
He can, yeah. But it's kind of him alone, and then once there's a sense of not wanting to push things too far.
And I have one other question, and I only bring this up because I saw a video the other day. Was Mr. Bean very popular in England, like as it was here? Like
it was.
People thought he was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, I did as a kid too. It was very exciting when a new one came out because they would show the same ones over and over. Yeah. A new one, like they were coming out when I was in in primary school, I think, elementary school. And it was a big deal when it was the talk of the playground when the new one would come out.
Yeah, I know he had a movie. I think it was like '97, but I remember everybody loved Mr. Bean. I don't know what he's doing now, but now I'm interested for this one too because we've talked a lot about American athletes on the show. Do you have a top 5 favorite athletes in this?
Most of them will be cricket related. That's the sport I know most about. I've always admired Misbah al-Haq. He is the captain of the Pakistan cricket team, and he took over when the Pakistan team were really at an all-time low. A number of their players had been found guilty of spot fixing.
I think this is on Netflix, especially.
Which is kind of where you say, the gambling mafia come to them and say, we want a no ball bowled.
Yeah.
And the 7th ball, they aren't 7 balls and over. On the 5th ball or the 6th over, whatever. And they do it. They take the money. They do it. And a couple of their players, 3 of their players, I think, have been found guilty of that. Added to that, there had been an attack. The Sri Lankan team had come over to tour Pakistan, and their bus had been attacked.
Oh wow!
By terrorists. So nobody was going to Pakistan to play. They couldn't play in their own country. They were playing in the United Arab Emirates. It became their new kind of home for like 10, 15 years.
Yeah. And
he took over in this dreadful situation, and he took them to be the number 1 test team in the world.
Oh wow!
That's the 5-day kind of cricket.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best captains cricket's ever had. I think he's a good batsman too, but his captaincy was really the the thing. I should mention, actually, tragically, he's just died very young. But Shane Warne, was the bowler of when I was growing up in the 90s. I hated him in the 90s because he was an Australian bowler.
Yeah.
He just made England look like they had, like they were holding a recorder.
Yeah.
made absolute fools of us every year. But terrific bowler, great commentator, and he died in his 50s just last week, which the whole cricket world is still kind of reeling from. A few started I support the Kent County Cricket Club, my local team back home. So I should pick some of them. Tammy Beaumont is there in the women's team. She's one of the most prolific run scorers in the international game now. And I always enjoyed, one of my favourites is not actually that great, but Joe Denley also plays for Kent. And he's kind of been in and out of the England team, but he just goes at it with it. He gives it his all every time he's kind of picked. And he's not someone who's dominated the national scene, but he's very kind of lovable. And I'm attracted to mediocrity because it's like looking in a sporting mirror of myself.
No, I like that. I have to look. I'm definitely gonna look some of this up because I am fascinated by cricket. I just don't know enough about it. All right, let's get into some blanks versus blanks here. First one, would you rather listen to Michael Jackson or Prince?
Sorry, honey, it's going to be Prince.
Okay.
And it's not going to accept that as a acceptable answer. But
I didn't get into Prince till he passed away, which is kind of weird. Like, I always knew Prince, but I don't know, when he passed, I started listening to all of it, and I go, where have I been? When I was younger, I loved a good Axeman.
Yeah. And I had no idea Prince was that until I had a friend who was a big fan, and he put me onto a few of his amazing guitar solos, and this man was oozed talent.
Everything. He could do it all. Okay, so one team is left, the Manchester Monarchs, but would you rather watch the Monarchs or the Boston Bruins?
Monarchs.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. Boston just seems a very long way away to me.
Did you enjoy more just because you were there? Like, would you have enjoyed it as much on TV?
Yeah, no, I would. I think live hockey is like no other sport imaginable. Hockey on TV is, enjoyable. I can appreciate it, but it's not got that kind of visceral thrill of you don't kind of feel the hits, you don't feel the speed in quite the same way as seeing it live. So I really miss. I really missed that.
Hopefully there's a team that comes in, but I totally agree with you on that. The Beatles or the Rolling Stones?
Beatles. Yeah, I'm a big Beatles fan.
I love the Beatles. We said this on the show one time. Like, how did that much talent be in one place?
It's extraordinary how it, well, it's difficult to go back and kind of judge them objectively because, particularly growing up in the 90s where they had this kind of second wind and every band in Britain tried to sound like the kind of the Beatles. And so every album I listen to, and they're also different from each other, I hear a different band that I used to like from the 90s who've tried to copy that particular album as their whole, but fantastic band.
I remember when people said that Oasis would be the next Beatles, and I never really. Yes, they're both British, but that was that's where it ended.
Well, they had little round glasses. I mean, how much more do you want?
Yeah. All right. Bigger genius, do you think? And I don't know if yours, Kurt Cobain or John Lennon.
Well, I liked Nirvana. I liked Nirvana at the time. I say at the time. He died shortly before. I was kind of old enough to really listen to that kind of thing. Yeah. So by 96, 7, I was listening to it, and I enjoyed it. But as a kind of real avid Beatles fan, I think I'm more of a
good John. Yeah, Cobain comes up a lot, and it's just like, what else could he have done? It's just grunge just kind of came in and punched music in the face, and then.
I have to say, I do admire his. He has a real kind of turn of phrase in his lyrics and things.
Yeah, I was just listening to stuff the other night, and I go, "Wow, he really was a genius." Would you rather watch a horror movie or a comedy?
Comedy. I think I've never been a huge horror fan. I can appreciate it when it's well done, but I like to watch relaxing things.
Yeah, understandable. I used to be all comedy. Now I'm all horror. It's, all right, two last ones. They're sports related. Soccer or rugby? I think I know your answer on that.
Rugby. Yeah.
So then maybe this is the hardest one. Rugby or cricket?
Cricket.
Okay.
There's nothing like sitting back with a warmish beer and just listening to the birds and the thwack of leather on willow.
Yeah. I do want to, like, I might have to ask the guys playing, like, hey, can I watch and figure out what's kind of going on here? You know, we've had interactions, but it's always been like softball and cricket, and we just both do our own things.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they're very similar, but they're also, there's a different feel to it insofar as, when I first came and watched the Fisher Cats, I felt like the batter was caught in this terrible, like, nightmarish web. Like a batsman in cricket can bat for days.
Yeah.
I mean, they usually bat for a few hours if they're doing well. But yeah, the batter goes out and hits it. I thought finally they hit it, and then someone catches it.
Yeah.
And it was, I didn't, it took me a while to understand the kind of dynamic of baseball in that sense. Is really quite different from the dynamic of cricket. But
both, I definitely, I want to know more about cricket. So I'm definitely, and I am going to watch that special on Netflix, because that is interesting that went down. But Michael, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a blast.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Love to have you again sometime if you can. But everybody out there, keep your heads up. Have a great rest of your week. No attacks. Not too worried about anybody coming on stage. Security did their job, so we appreciate that. But have a great week, and until next time, let freedom ring.